Further debate. The Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Speaker, for recognizing me to speak on Bill 3, Pay Transparency Act. I think this is a very important debate. We are having, Speaker, in this legislature on Bill 3, but through Bill 3 on an important issue around gender wage gap, around issues around pay equity, and of course, not only the empowerment of women, but the role of women in our economy. And our economy is only going to be stronger if there's full participation by women in that economy. I want to pick up from where the member from Oshawa left off. I agree with her that this is not a new problem. This is a problem that have existed for some time. But I think, Speaker, the fact that we're still dealing with a problem tells us that this is a quite persistent problem. And different things have been tried at different times, things like pay equity legislation, but what we are finding still that there's still a wage gap. There is still a wage gap as it relates on the lines of gender, as it relates to women, especially women who have disabilities. So the task for us, of course, as legislators is always to keep on top of these issues, to make sure that we are not being complicit. We, of course, will try different things, and governments of all stripes have tried things, both at federal and provincial level. But if they are not working, or if they're not taking us all the way we want to, where women and men are paid equally, where women and men are given the same opportunities to do the same kind of work, then we need to take those very important steps to deal and address those issues. And that's why I think, Speaker, the Pay Transparency Act is an important piece of legislation, because it is taking that next step in Ontario to deal with issues around gender wage gap. Now, Speaker, we've heard, I'm sure from other members, that this is part of Ontario's strategy for women's economic empowerment, then, now, and next. And it is for first of its kind of strategy that is working to reduce barriers and help women succeed in any path they choose. Other countries have done different things, and of course we learn from that, good or bad, but we need to make sure that we are taking steps here in our province. Speaker, this legislation, if passed, would require all public job postings to include salary ranges and bar employers from asking applicants about their past compensation. It would also eventually require certain employers to record, report, and post compensation data that includes gender and other diversity characteristics. This may, on its face, seem straightforward or simple, but in my view, Speaker, it's quite powerful, because what we're talking about is something that I feel very strongly about, is data collection. It is to make sure that we've got enough data, and that data, that information is made publicly available, so that you and I and our citizens can make a determination what the information is, what that information means, and if there are deficiencies that are identified or highlighted as a result of the information before us, we can take certain steps. And I think that's exactly, in my view, Speaker, what we're doing here today through this important piece of legislation, is making sure that we are making public job postings with compensation, so that everybody knows exactly what is the compensation associated with that job is, not what people are getting paid, whether they are men or women. And of course, requiring that data based on gender and diversity characteristics, of course, allows for that additional layer that we need to put in place. Speaker, I just feel that this is an important progressive step that the government is taking. I am confident, Speaker, that when we are speaking around issues around pay equity and gender wage gap, that this House, the House that I know and the House that I work at, will deem this as to a non-partisan issue, because it is talking about the 50% of our population, and making sure that they are at the same level as everybody else in our province. I also feel strongly, Speaker, that this strategy and this piece of legislation builds very firmly on the work the government is doing when it comes to precarious employment, when it comes to the working conditions of people who are working in part-time, casual, or seasonal work. We know the data demonstrate that most of the people who work in those precarious work environment are women, are racialized. These tend to become entry-level jobs where somehow people are paid less for the same level kind of work that they may be doing if somebody was employed in a full-time position. Through Bill 148, the legislation that we brought and passed in this House, we have taken steps to ensure that we have equal pay for equal work. Again, a very straightforward, simple concept, but a powerful one because it doesn't exist. And when it comes to part-time workers, casual workers, seasonal workers, it is important. Given the fact that we know that most of them are women or racialized Ontarians, that you've got equal pay for equal work. Not to mention, Speaker, bringing a living wage of $15 an hour is another very important and powerful step to ensure that the floor is much higher when it comes to employment inequality. And again, it would help those individuals who work on those jobs who tend to pay minimum wage get a fair wage, a wage that will ensure for them to be able to live a decent or a better quality of life. So, Speaker, I look at this legislation in combination with the suite of things that are being done by the government, and Bill 148 is front and center in that. I think you combine all that, you see that we are taking a very concerted step, a focused approach to dealing with issues around precarity of employment. We are taking issues around gender wage gap, and we're taking steps around pay equity as it relates to women in particular and other underrepresented groups. Once again, Speaker, I urge all the members to support this important bill. I know in my community of Ottawa Centre, I work with women's group all the time, and groups who are working around eliminating inequities within our workforce and our work environment. And this is one of the issues that come up often, that we still live in a time and a place where gender wage gap exists. This legislation in my community of Ottawa Centre is very much and very well received, Speaker. Question is asked, how come we have not done this before? Fair question, Speaker. The fact of the matter is that we're taking a concerted effort in terms of the work we're doing around equal pay for equal work, the work we're doing around a living wage, and also a legislation such as Pay Transparency Act as we're debating today, because all that stitched together, Speaker, is going to result in meaningful steps in a meaningful manner in which we can ensure that everyone in our society is getting paid the same and have the same opportunity to succeed. Thank you, Speaker.